Actually, I do that because I'll. It's not so much to clean it, but to pickle it, to etch the surface, so it'll take paint easier. But don't listen to me. Listen to her. She's the expert.
It's not as hard as I think it is. Stupid photography haven't pre-adjusted yet since I logged in.
We're still great.
Yeah.
Is this, should we start? Is it time?
You have got 2 minutes. So
Okay, I'll
I'm already running, but when you're ready to start,
Yeah, I'll just, I could use a little couple minutes too.
you want a water, Yvonne?
No, I'm good. Thank you though.
Thank you. Oh, quick reference. Does that mean under 3 hours for me?
Excuse me, everybody. Yep. All right. So, some space up on the
Where do you get a really obvious?
I don't know where Dan got this one. I have one. It's not big enough for the tablet, but it's a Manfrotto one that I got from Amazon. It's great for my phone, but it's not big enough for the tablet.
Yeah.
And really, it's like when you're doing stuff like this, you really need a tripod to keep it nice and stable. Because otherwise, you're going to get motion sickness from trying to watch YouTube videos. That's one of the things that work. I got everybody saying, "We want YouTube videos." I'm like, "No, you really don't." I get what you're saying, but you really don't want YouTube videos.
Okay. All right.
Walking out. It's like
Busy.
Oh, yeah, it's really weird.
All right. So I am going to try to cover this as fast as I can because at the very end of this, I have my friend Paul that is going to go into the second stage, which is the soldering of the Photoetch. Okay. Last couple times I did this, people have asked for it since I've never had the need to do soldering. I just don't. I don't want to talk about something I haven't done. So
That's nice of you.
yeah. So then I figured if you're gonna learn something, you're gonna learn from somebody that has a lot of experience on it. So Paul is gonna jump in and do the soldering, which is very interesting too, because certain situations you're gonna need to do that, depending on what kind of model journey you build. Primarily, my background is motorcycle modeling, but I've done planes, tanks, and everything in between, figures and stuff. But I like motorcycles, and that's how I got hooked onto the Photoetch because it's very difficult to represent some of the small parts in motorcycles with plastic, and they don't look very realistic. So I started going into that real quick, and then from that it just sort of went crazy from it. Anyway, I have a handout for those of you that haven't gotten one. It's right here as a little file. You got one? You got one? Do you need one?
I got one.
And I think you need one. Yeah. So I just put here, I just have a little quick reference. So when you go back home and try to work on it, you can kind of see a little summary of what I'm going to talk about. But what I wanted to do is make a list here so people don't have to be writing frantically without looking at what I'm doing, right? So here's some of the options. I'm not saying you got to buy all these things. Far from it. You don't need a whole lot of tools to do Photoetch, okay? But here's some of the things that you're going to need. Particular glue for this. You cannot need the Tamiya glue, the plastic Tamiya glue, because that's, you know how that works? It kind of acts against the plastic and it kind of blends the plastic, chemical reaction with the plastic. Well, you're gluing metal with plastic, so it's not going to work, right? So you need something else. Super glue is, or CA glue is the most popular one. It's not the only way to glue things. That is a way to do it. Okay, it's very brittle, so if you're going to be maneuvering the model a lot, it might pop out after a while. So then you have choices, other choices. Soldering is one of them. If it is going to be a really like a skirt that needs to stay there with things hanging from it, you might want to weld that instead of just super gluing. You might super glue that to the tank, but then other things might be welded to it. Okay? But other things that I find very helpful that I use a lot for gluing is, for example, clear glue, clear paint, like the X22. Especially if the part is small, like a handle, a buckle, in my case, a rivet, right? And this is very forgiving because you can wipe it off, right? Much easier than super glue. Super glue, if you're doing this on top of painted surface, you've got a one shot at it, so then you don't ruin what you have. But this is good because if you put it in the wrong place, you have more time to adjust it, and you can then clean it up afterwards. How do I take it off? With a cotton swab, and then their
X20.
yeah, the whatever the
Thinner.
what you call it? The thinner, yeah, the tamidas. I would stick with that manufactured product. I mean, some people say, oh, you can use acetone. You can go in and you can do your test, okay? Now, if you're going to do it over a painted finished surface, I prefer to use either this white glue, just normal white glue. It can be micro, crystal clear, or the Model Master Canopy glue, whatever you use. And then there's one glue called Gator glue, and it's made by some guy that had the need to do photo etching without the risk of super gluing stuff. And he got so annoyed with it. He does mostly sci-fi, and he didn't invent it. He just made it. He was a major in chemistry, and he remembers, oh yeah, I learned how to do that. So he sells that, and it's like $5 a jar. I don't have one of those, but I really want to try it because I like the idea of using that. Because this is water-based. You can just wipe it with water, and your paint is pristine underneath still. Okay. And I wanted to just spend a little more time on the glue because this is probably I think the most stressful part, because that's the part that make it or break it, right? Because if you don't, it's useless to have this beautiful set of photo etch if you don't know how to put it on. Then you're going to destroy the model. Might as well just build it out of the box. It'll be better, right? If you don't know how to attach the stuff without ruining your work underneath. Now, if you're going to do super glue, there's so many options. All the different textures work. There's the thin, the medium, but I like the gap filling one. That is not a super thin one. That one scares me because it just goes very fast, and unless what you're using is unpainted, rough, and whatnot, it's hard to control. Very hard to control. If you need this to act faster, then you just use the accelerator. Just dab a cotton swab in there and boom on it. Or just like a toothpick and go on it afterwards. So you put the and just accelerate it with it. I'd rather do it this than have the thin type that goes in seconds. That's my preference. The gel is really good too. Okay? So the gel, it's like a lot of people make them these days, right? And another glue that is really nice too is this GS Typo cement. I don't know if you guys, a lot of people that do fillings probably have this because it's like a white kind of jewelry. People that do jewelry, they will have this, and this is a good little,
Hypo cement.
Hypo cement as well. So that is another choice for it, a less lethal choice for it. Okay? So this is on glue. Now, remember I told you that I mostly do motorcycles, and I like the metal to look like metal because that's what I'm putting on the model. For example, disc brakes. I want those to look metal, so I don't have to paint a lot of times. Most of the time I don't have to paint the photo etch. If you're doing tanks or planes, you might have to paint that. And if you are going to paint that, then you might want to prime that. You definitely want to clean it. Okay? You want to clean the metal before you apply with, you can do paint thinner, or some people said that they have used something else. What was it, vinegar or whatever?
Vinegar to etch the metal.
That just like a plastic kit before you paint, don't you wash it? That's basically the same thing, because whatever that release agent is left on the plastic, right, it can't interfere with your paint. You might look out and, you know, I've painted a lot of kits without washing when I was growing up and nothing ever happened. But anyway, so you might want to clean it before you start. Some people just clean, here's a fret, a Photoetch, right? You just wipe, get some sort of like a rag or whatever, and you just wipe it on paint thinner and you very gently clean it. Because a lot of these parts might be small, and if you just go real hard, you might break it before you even use it, right? All right, so some other tools in here real quick. So the glue applicator, I use a toothpick. That's as cheap as it gets. You can use a blade, you can use a little piece of wire, you can use the fancy applicators for capillary action, that works really good too. But you know, that is one way to do it. The debonder. The debonder is one of my best companions, because this is not only going to remove that part from there and give you another shot at it if the surface is not faded, or it will allow you for cleanup. Because as you are putting it together, especially if you're using the thicker that doesn't, the thicker super glue that doesn't adhere immediately, right? You have a few seconds, 30 seconds, and you can still kind of move it around. That tends to the overflow of it tends to go into your fingers, and you're like finger boogering everything, and then at the end it looks terrible. So get a cotton swab then, and with a cotton swab, you can dab into this and you can clean it up, and it will look like you are the best modeler in the world. and here, you know, so just go with this and clean it up. And then for me, like the disc brakes are the ones, because you have to align it perfectly to make it to give it depth. You have a one side and another side. Sometimes there's three pieces together, and there's those holes in between, and they have to align. So I use tweezers to kind of try to guide them. But once it looks like crap. So then you clean it up and you're good to go.
What do you use to use super glue off your fingers? That's okay for...
Or acetone.
Yeah,
Fingernail
fingernail polish
polish.
remover
Yeah,
is good.
or acetone.
Fingernail polish remover.
Yeah, I usually have this
fingernail polish
two
remover
right
on my
there,
skin.
so I just, but this is your skin, not that you care, tremendously. So after that, wash it
It
with
can't
soap.
be worse than dry from
Yeah.
super glue.
Exactly. What else do we have here? Bonder, accelerator, I talk about that. Nippers. Nippers, that if you're going to use nippers to remove photo etch from the screw, you're going to destroy your plastic nippers if you use those. Okay? So I mean, you can if you want. It will cut it for a few times, but then you'll have to need another one. So it has to be nippers for metal. Okay? Zuron, the ones with the glue handles, they're good for that. Or you can have the little Tamiya scissors for photo etch. So these are available in the US. They're just like photo etch nippers, I think what they call scissors. And I like, my personal favorite is the one from, I don't know if you've ever heard of Model Factory Hero. It's like a major car model manufacturer. They have a line of tools called Beretta, I think, and these are not cheap. These are about $40 for this one, but they are gonna last you for the rest of your life. And then what I like about them is that they're really, really thin, and they're able to go in places the Zuron or these cannot go. Okay? And then you just go, and they're like super precise, very high quality if you want to take a look, because this is amazing. So I invest. Huh?
Get a nice flush cut.
Oh, perfect. So I really like that, and since I do it so much, I decided to invest in that. But you don't have to buy all the tools. Okay? Another very easy budget way to go that works very good too is just an Excel knife. Now the trick is to not use a cutting mat. You know the self-healing cutting mats? Forget it. It's not going to work. Put a piece of glass, a tile, a white tile, you go to Home Depot, might cost you 10 cents. A tile or anything that is hard on top of it. I use this, and when I'm it's really smooth, that the will not give. Because if it gives, you will bend and you're not going to cut it. And then you can try to unbend it. Good luck with that. Once you bend it, you're bent. You know, if you break it, because this stuff can be very thin. So if you I like this type of blade just because I got used to it and I just rock it in there, and I'll show you in a minute how I do it. There's another smaller blade if you like that too. That works good too, and the chisel blade works good too. Like there is a blade that I did not bring that blade. I forgot. That's what I got. It's sort of like a jagged blade like that for the small handle like this. That works too because it's sort of like straight in a very subtle angle instead of being like a number 11 like this.
Yeah.
It's like a fraction of the size of this, but it's in a 30-degree angle or something. That's a good blade too. Or the thicker handle, the number, what is it called? Number 2 handle? Yeah. You can go straight down on it like that, which works really well too. Actually, if you don't want to spend any money, that's what I would go for that. And that is the best budget way. Now, it's going to dull your knife, your blade fast. And if you want to be buying these blades over and over again, you can just use a whetstone and sharpen it and just keep it short. There is a blade that you can buy from Excel that is a stainless steel blade, and they're not disposable. They cost a lot more, but they'll last. You can resharpen. Some of these blades are a bit hard to be resharpened, but you can try it, okay? Especially if it's for cutting now. All right, so what else do we have here? Modeling knife. Okay, in order for you to attach Photoetch, some of the time you can just add that to the model because the model doesn't have that detail that you're adding. Or it has that detail you're adding, but it's made of plastic and it looks pretty cool. So you're gonna have to remove something from the plastic model before you can add your part. And for that, you can use either sanding sticks to remove the detail on the surface of the model, so you don't have to buy anything, you already have that. Or you can use a chisel, okay? And you might have some of these already, but there is a myriad of chisels out there that work good. All sorts of shapes and forms and whatnot, okay? So anywhere from the more expensive ones to the least expensive ones from X-Acto. Okay, so just a little chisel to get it out of there. Hasegawa makes great chisels. They're not cheap, but they're super high quality. Okay, and then Wave is another brand. Makes there's about a dozen different kinds of these, different shapes, different thickness, whatever you need it to. And then you have BMC, which will be more in the high end of the thing, where you basically buy these things on 30 different thickness, and then you can get a handle to attach it to, and then you make your own chisel. So you don't need a handle for every chisel, but that would be just give you, especially for you guys with bigger hands, it's usually kind of awkward to hold just a little blade. So if you have a bigger hand, this makes it easier for you.
Are these like real sharp? Do you just have to like push down
This is like,
to cut
it will
something,
cut
or?
plastic like butter if it's sharpened. So you just sort of go on and less is better, right? So you start from the top, and
Kind of
then
like staircases off the side
yeah,
of battleships.
and when you get close to the surface, then I go over to the sanding sticks. That way you just get some time off. Because the thing about Photoetch, it's time consuming. That's why I think a lot of times it turns people off. Because it might take a month to build a model out of the box. It might take 2 or 3 to build it with the Photoetch on it. Just because it takes a lot more work. All right, what else? So we have chisels, sanding sticks, and files. Okay, once you remove the part from the fret, from Photoetch fret, just like plastic, you're going to have a little notch if you don't cut it real close, right? So you can just leave it alone if you want, but the whole point of attaching Photoetch is to make it more realistic. So you're gonna leave the knob. It's counterintuitive. I mean, you might want to be as clean as possible. So the way you do that is by using files. But again, the files have to be metal files, not plastic files. There's so many files out there, and 90% of them are from plastic only. And if you're gonna use one of those for the metal, it might work 2 or 3 times, and then it will not work again, not even for the plastic. So you will destroy those files, and some of them can be pretty expensive, right? So you would be, if you're gonna be working with Photoetch, you might want to invest in something like this. You can use sanding sticks if you want, if it's very small. Okay? So if you want to not invest because you don't know if you're going to like it and you might not ever do it again, just use sanding sticks and you should be fine. You will destroy the sanding sticks, but it's very cheap, right? You might just get one dedicated for just that and then be done with it. But these are good because they are for metal. And you might be able to hold the part to get that little knob out of there, but depending on the size of the part, it might be hard. So then we go into pliers. And you don't have to buy a fancy plier, okay? As long as the pliers are straight and don't have any of those little serrated things for grip in there, it will work fine, okay? So then what you want is to make it be absolutely flat. This happens to be a Tamiya pair of pliers made for photo etch work, but it's available on most hobby stores these days. It's been out for 10 years probably. And they have a shorter one and they have a longer one. And it's nice because you can hold the part flat on this, and then you can go with this. Okay? And file it with a knot. And I'll show you there in a minute. What else? And and I brought so many here because you can see that you can go to town on these, but you really don't need a lot of them. These are more like banding pliers for little, if you want to make circles like if you want to bend and not fold, these are good pliers. These are like a little, see how the end of it is in a way that allows you to hold a photo etch, and then with your finger you can make the part go around it like this. So these are like options, right? What else? Chisels and sticks. Benders. The cheapest benders are going to be your fingers, right? If the part is large, you can do that. You can just go ahead and hold the part down into your desk. Let's just do this. Let's just start getting some of this stuff out of the way here. Let's take the screw out of here.
Watch out for the razor blade.
Yeah. So this happens to be, I believe it's a German toolbox, but I think it could be any toolbox. And when I picked this out of a drawer yesterday, I wanted something small, fast that we could actually build. Am I doing it time?
Are you doing it on time?
Yeah, because I can talk for hours.
You're at 20 minutes.
I already did 20?
Yeah, you've done
Okay,
20.
Okay. So I decided to assemble the right side of the top of the toolbox, because this would take me probably an hour to build this whole thing. I don't have an hour. And if I'm talking, it probably would take 2 hours to build it. But it's one of those toolboxes that you open like this. And it has 2 levels on one side, 2 levels on the left side, and then you have the bottom for bigger pieces. This is how it looks like, right? So what I did was I assembled the top right level so that we can assemble the top left level, because it has a bend, it has a top, and it has a boss. So it should be probably pretty fast to do, okay? So here is, and just be careful when you hold it, but here is the other side that I did. You can see the little lid. Open the little lid. Here is the little lid. Open, and this is the little box, and this is super glued, okay? So that is the little mini box assembled. The top. 15 minutes took me, 20 minutes, because I didn't know where I left my super glue. So I had to go look for it. So this is the little top. So this is going to be what I'm going to try to do here. But I figured I'll do one, because if I don't have time to finish, you can see what it looks like, and you don't have to take my word for it. and you can see that it is very delicate, and I didn't want to cramp. Anyway, there is a... So this is where it came from. Okay? It came from that spot right there. I took 2 pieces out of it, and I used that spot. If you are going to use your knife, the X-Acto knife, to cut that, it is actually very cool, because you can land, usually the top of the fret is it has a recess on the little knob that holds it to the fret. So that knob is on purpose thinner than the part. So there is a little step from the part into the knob. So if you, and I need my glasses on, but I can't see a darn thing. If you land your knife gently on top of the knob and you move it to the right, you see how it stops? So if you cut right, yeah. Yeah, so if you cut right there, then you're gonna have very little work to do afterwards. So I'm gonna do, let's see, 1 and 2, all right. So I'm going to cut this part, which is 1. So I have 2 knobs on the right and 2 knobs on the left. And then I have 1 each over there in that corner, okay, for this part. So I got two knobs, and two on the top. So I'm just gonna go with this knife to show you, and I'm gonna go slip, and that's important. I hold the part, because I don't want to go look for it, model table down there. I hold the part, and I just go straight down like this. I hold the same thing, hold the part, and I go straight down like this again. Okay. Now, one of the things that I learned, because I lost a lot of Photoetch parts, is that I like to use tape underneath it. And if I put tape underneath it, I am guaranteed that I am not going to lose it, right? So I usually just put that on the back of it, and then I cut it. The reason I'm not going to do it on this one, and you have to be selective when you're going to use this, is because this is very strong. And when I was building that one, the little tiny knob on the top, where it's going to have to curve down, that already bent on its own from just removing from the grip of the tape. Okay? I have never done what I'm going to say now, but I heard that, and I disclose it like that, so I'm not, if I haven't done it, I'll tell you. Somebody told me that what they do is they put it on a plastic bag, the fret, and they cut it inside it. That way, if it flings, it doesn't fling. Because yeah, you're gonna have a cut on it, but if you get those cheap Walmart ones that are not very thick for sandwiches, you just cut it in there, so then everything is in it, and you're gonna cut one part at a time. So it makes sense, and I'm gonna give it a try. But I wanted to just share that. But I've never done it, but I think it makes perfect sense. But I use this a lot for bigger parts and parts. You see, there's so many tools in here. You see how little that stuff is? I think I'll ruin it if I put the whole, because normally I put the whole fret on it when I do my motorcycle parts, but not for this one. But anyway, since these parts are big enough, I can do that. And where's the little scissor? So I'm going to use these because I know I can get a nicer cut. See, this is already off. I don't know if you can see, but I already cut that. So I'm going to use the little scissors to cut the other sides. And all you do is just insert it in there and just pick it up. Yeah, you can see that just from cutting, one of them already wants to bend. See, because this is a very delicate one, right? So one already wants to bend. I don't know if you can see from there. Here's the thing with Photoetch. You have 2 shots at it most of the time, maybe 3. I doubt you're going to have 4 shots at it. And sometimes you have 1 shot. On what? On bending it. You bend it wrong, you might be able to bend it back and bend it to the right direction now. But if you go one more time, you are going to break it probably because it's going to fall off. Okay? And then you're going to have to look for Paul to soldering it. So I have little knobs on it, and I'm going to hold it and clean it because I don't want to assemble something with these little knobs on it. So I'm holding it, and you see I put it almost as if you see how it's at the very end of it. At the very, very end. I'm holding it really tight, and then I'm going to use my little knife. And both of them are the same. Their one is just bigger. I'm going to use my little knife, and a little bit goes a long ways because this is soft. And I'm just going to pile it off, make sure that, and you can use your fingers to say, oh yeah, gently, which then brings me to this. I always have a bundle. I only brought one, but I always have a pack. And I like the ones that already have the Neosporin on it. So just go gently on it, and you will see, oh, there it goes. Okay, this is nice and soft. So now I go to the other end. I clamp the other end, go close. And I go take those little knobs out. I'll sand it very gently. And I like this because it's flat, but a sanding stick would have done the same thing. Okay? And now we're going to do it from the little knobs. And these in particular are very important that you clamp them at the very end because they are so delicate that if you don't clamp them right, they will break on you. There, I got them. I don't know if you can see it. It's really good. You see how you can see the little protrusion there? Okay, then I'm gonna go very
Photoetch is not something you do when you're in a hurry.
no, or when you had, where you're doing like a trembling or.
Too much
Yeah,
caffeine.
Yeah. Okay, that'd be good. So we have part number 1 right there. And now we're gonna take that little box. Remember the box? And my lid is falling off here. I didn't want to ramp it too much, but the little lid is. Oh, there it goes. Some of this stuff is so cute. Especially these little tools, these little armor tools. I think it's adorable. All right. So now we're gonna take the little box. The little box. And open it up. Good. One side. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to mention that there are some Photoetch sets that are front-free. What do I mean by that? They do not have any connection points. They are in an adhesive piece of paper. I absolutely love them. Unfortunately, they don't make those on motorcycles. You just basically use tweezers, and they still come on a thing like that, but there are no connection points. And you pick the one you want, you pluck it out of the glue, and it already has the adhesive on it. And you put it on. Isn't that heaven or what? No super glue, no nothing. So those are usually more expensive because of that process, but they are out there. And sometimes they might not have the glue on them. You still have to glue them, but there's nothing to clean up. So it kind of speeds up, right? I think Scale Motorsports is a manufacturer that does that a lot, especially for rivets. Who wants to be cleaning rivets, right? And it can happen. I mean, it's the first sets, initial sets. Here's to me that is all smooth. All right. So here's our little box. Now we're gonna fold that in. So I'm demoing here something that is built standalone. This is not attached to any model, right? This is just a thing on its own. If you're attaching this to a model, and I'm going to just make a parenthesis before I go on, is that what you want to do is you need to study the instructions of the Photoetch set that you're about to attach, and you need to get like a highlighter or a pen of some kind. Okay? I use highlighters. And you want to mark what you're going to do. So here I have highlighted, this happens to be a motorcycle I'm building, what I have in metal that needs to go in the model. I have done many times plowed through the build, and then I look, oh yeah, that pedal needs to go, and then I find out I missed 3 things that I needed to have attached already that I can no longer put on because it's, I'm not going to destroy what I did already. So you grab your Photoetch set instructions. This is my Photoetch set instructions for this kit. You grab that and you follow that. Look at every single one of the parts you're going to have to attach. Find the matching location on your instructions and warn yourself that you're going to have to put something else in there. So there's work to be done here. You can't just plow through. Sometimes, like in grills, for example, you don't have to take the grill that is already there. You can just pluck it on top of it, and it will look more realistic. Sometimes you gotta remove the grill. But when some of these instructions, this is a very crude set of instructions right here for Photoetch. They basically just telling you, put this here, put the arrows, not even saying, right? They just have arrows telling you what to do. But some of them are really nice. And they tell you what to remove, what is the number of the part in the kit that you need to work on. Now that's heaven, right? Mine are not like that. Yeah, but some of these, where did I put it? Anyway, some of these are, oh, there it is. Yeah, I thought, did I not get it? So this one doesn't say anything because it is just a box that you build if you want. Don't build if you don't want. It's just like an add-on, right? But I have another one on here on the gun tractor from Edward. Edward usually has way better instructions, and you will see.
Sometimes.
Yeah, but compared to those,
Well,
yeah.
well, actually, my favorites are for paragraphics, but Edward,
yeah,
sometimes
their
it's like,
graphics is very nice too.
you know, Edward, they'll give you a sheet where they say, yeah, just drop this on the part, and it's not printed at the right scale. So
I'm gonna pass this around. It will tell you the original kit part in black. The Photoetch part will be in blue. The parts that need to be removed will be in pink. And where you need to fill being green. So take a look. I'm gonna try if I have time to do this little dashboard here, but I might not have time. But just take a look and you will see. Because that's simple. You grab that, you grab your kit instructions, you sit on the TV, put football, whatever you want in there, and you just go the entire instruction marking, and then you're ready to build. And you will thank yourself you did that, if you take the time. If you only remember one thing, that will be it, right there. That will save you so much time and frustration if you do that. So anyway, bending. I said fingers are the best way to go, right? And it is true. You can spend hundreds of dollars on fancy stuff, like bending tools. And this is actually a small one compared to the ones that are out there. You can spend $200-300 on a large tank skirt bending tool, or you can use a straight edge if that's what you're up to. My go-to thing is most of the time, where's my book? Oh, is this little tiny guy right here. It's called the Bug. I think it's like $30.
Yep.
Okay, and then they're probably cheaper now because I bought this years and years ago. This is from the small shop in the UK, and it comes with a razor blade for you to use it to lift with the fold, and it has a series of functions. And it usually has a knob, and it has all these crazy stuff, right, all the way around it. What's that for? And that's usually to allow you to fold things. The first fold, it won't matter almost. The first fold you can do anywhere. The second, the third, and the fourth is the problem. That's why they have these knobs, right? Because like in the box, I'll show you here. So in the box, we're gonna have to fold 4 sides, right? So the first one, they usually have a straight side for larger pieces, okay? This side right here, and this kind of rotates. It's loose now, and I can tighten it, but it's loose now, okay? And I can take it all the way out. If I want to turn it around altogether, I can take it all the way out. I don't need to, but I could if I wanted to. So you have a straight side, and then you have divisions. And they just made these random. They don't know what you're going to need, right? So depending on the part, you have to judge which one of these little arms are going to be better for your thing. So when I decided, so then this one right here, I'm going to make the large bend first. And if you look at the part, you see like there's a line in there? That's a channel, okay? So you want to bend 99% of the time towards the channel. So the channel will be hidden when you fold it. If it is not that way, they will most of the time tell you the instructions. It is not that way. Go against it, okay? But most of the time, the channel is, and then it helps you also align it, right? Because you have to put this in the tool. By the way, you can use pliers for the same exact thing. You can use that in fingers, okay? If you want to. The same pliers that you were using to hold the part to. So I'm going to put the part in there. I'm going to turn this knob, and I'm going to try to tighten it as much as I can and make it as straight as possible. All right, I'm going to pass this around so you can see how I have it in there. And then I'm going to... And actually, I could have done slightly different, but that works too. But there's a piece of it underneath, of course, right? And that gives you a chance to look at the device too. Because and you can, this is cheap, right? But it came with it, but you can just, if you lose it, you just grab another one of these. The important thing is it has to be really thin. That's why they use razor blades. If you use a thicker one, it doesn't work very well. It's very frustrating. I bought this tool, which cost $5 out of China, and I really like it. I did that box, one of the sides I used it just to try it out. And this one is different, right? Why is it $5 and that's $30? Because this is a machine piece of metal right here, which costs a lot more to make. This is just a piece of metal that has the same division. So what you do is you hold the part down on a flat surface, and it works just fine. You hold the part down, but you have to have a good grip. So you have to be at the end of the table, I think, to even use your thumb to kind of put a lot of grip on it, and then you can fold it. Because you don't want that part to slide as you're folding, because then you're going to ruin the part, right? You can bend it, and it's going to be really hard to make it go back. So this is another way if you want to try something a little fancier than a pair of pliers, but you don't want to spend $30, $40, $100, okay? And they came with this little contraption here to bend it. I hate that thing. It does not work because it's too thick. It's hard to go underneath your parts to make it go up, which is why the razor blade is the way to go. So I bent one of those boxes with this, but I used the razor blade to move it because I couldn't make this go underneath. I thought, okay, I understand why they did that, because they want to use the same metal as they use on the rest of the part, but it just doesn't work. All right, so what I'm going to do is I could have put the whole thing under there and just use, as a matter of fact, I'm going to do that, and just use the way I have it in here. You see how the part that I'm going to bend is under it? I could have done the other way around, have the part that I'm going to bend the outside. Doesn't matter because it's going to bend that way no matter what. The only problem with doing it the way I have it here is that if I'm not very careful, I might bend more than what I want because that other bend is right there waiting to be done. So it could be a little dangerous, but I'm not going to redo it just for time purpose. I just slide it all the way to the end there, okay? Just put it underneath, and then I just move it over all the way 90 degrees. So that's the bend right there, okay? So now I get it out of there, but now you can see how it would be extremely difficult for me to bend the little mini part. Let's do the other one that is easy. Let's do the other long side, okay? So I'm gonna go put the long side in there, slide it in. It's gonna become more clear how the third band is gonna be tricky. So I'm gonna.
You sort of have to think about how it's going to.
Oh yeah,
The
you
order
have
in
to.
which you want to fold.
Exactly. So it's a little origami. So I got that there now. See, got the other side there. All right. The other side is slid over there. So the one we just did is there. Yeah. Now I slid the other side of the box there.
Yep.
See? Okay.
There'll be enough clearance that you can still bring that.
And that is why they
Oh, I see
make
the
it
channel
this way,
there. Yeah,
right?
Okay.
So then I slide it in, and I will move it that way. Everything is good, but we're going to be holes on the next one, right? Because it's very small. See, it's kind of, no, it worked great, right?
Yep.
Okay. Make sure I leave 20 minutes. And tell me
You're
when
right about there. So.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm gonna do, instead of gluing this, I'm gonna just pass on to Paul. But I'm gonna do these two bands because those are the most important ones. Okay. So now I can't do that there anymore. It won't work because as I go do that, see how it's gonna go in the way. So that's when I go pick my best. What is my best option? Is it this one? Is it this one? Is it this one? So that's what those are for. You're gonna pick. You're gonna pick which one. Same thing could happen with this. You go pick whichever ones you want. That one's probably better, right? So you pick which one is gonna be best. Okay. So I'm going to go to this one because it works fine. I'm gonna clamp it down. And and move it around now. Put that part there, right?
This one I can see, it's that fourth band that I'm having trouble seeing.
Same way. That's
Yeah,
just did this one.
same
Just
way.
gotta flip it around.
So I'm gonna put it in there. I'm
Yeah.
gonna nail it down. I nailed it down. Okay? Nailed it down. And I use that one now. Because I couldn't have used the other one, right? And now I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna slide it under. I'm going to move that. Cute as a bug, right?
This would be a good footage to practice on figure, because it's the
Same thing. So
standalone.
I'm gonna do the other side. And if Paul wants, he can weld this for us.
Soldering.
All right. Not normally allowed. Tighten it again, okay? We have our cute as a bug little box. See? There we have it. So then now, I want to go, because I want to save some time, but I can. Just do it real quick.
Language.
And you can use, like, I brought up a various kinds for you to see. By the way, if the part's really small, you can use these little sticky end things. So those are for to hold it and put it in there in place. Tweezers sometimes make the part clean, or an oil-based watercolor. Put it in there. And what I do, rivets on the motorcycle, I just get my toothpick and I just use saliva. I just wet it and I put it on the part. It's already there. The moment it touches the glue, it gets off. It's the least amount of resistance from the toothpick, right? So I like that way to do it too. So if we go do the glue here real quick so that Paul can... Oh, and by the way, when you're doing super glue, I like to use these little things. You can use anything you want. You can put it straight under the glass, which is why glass is good too, because you can scrape it once it's cured and you've got a clean glass, right? So if you just put a little dab in there, that's the dab I use for the whole box that I build at home. That dab right there next to it. And then you just dab your little toothpick in there, and then you just go into it. And I usually use the glue inside. And you just put a little bit in there. And we could use accelerator on this one. Oh, this one is a good example too. I forgot that. There's these little holes in there, and as you're putting super glue in it, you might clog those, and I'm gonna need those to be open because on this particular box, when I finish this at another time, I am going to need to make my rods to make this box move, right? And that hole cannot close on me with super glue. So after I did this, I just go into the holes, and I just sort of make sure that they are not, they don't have any glue in them. So I use this knife, and I can see that there's glue on the knife, which means I did clean up the hole. And as I put the super glue, what I'll do is I'll just hold it for a little bit. It doesn't take long. Just hold it for a little bit so there's a little tension on the sides, and the box will be ready to go. That little piece that we cut right there is the lid for it, right? And the lid, I'm going to tell you this just because it's probably important. Because it tricked me when I did the other side. If you get pliers, this is when the pliers are better. Okay? This thing is so flimsy, the end of it, that I held the plier a little bit forward, not where it touches the longer piece. See how there's not the connection point? Because if I hold it here and try to bend that, it will want to bend 90 degrees. I don't want it bend 90 degrees. I want it to fold on me. So I had to hold it like that. A little fast.
Fold it around the tip.
I wanted to fold it. I'm going to use my finger because this is so soft. I'm going to use my fingers to make it go that way. And my fingernails. So I make it go that way just so that it can be steady curves. A bigger bender, you can use rods, which is why I have all of these in here for you to use. I have every size of them, one inside the other. And you don't need this big. If you go along with somebody, cut in half. And somebody gets that half, somebody gets this half. And it's tools for life, right? So this one basically is just gonna go, I'll put it this for completion. There's two little minuscule little cuts in there. We'll put it in there like this. Make a liar out of it. There you go. Once it goes in there, go. Okay, it's there now. Okay, I can go now with my pliers, and I can just hold it back. I can complete that. And now, here we have our little toolbox. If we can detach from my fingers, it's super good to it. So this is the little toolbox. But that's what I was saying. There's some boogers of glue on it. I can just get my debonder and I can just clean it up, and it will be pristine. Okay. So let Paul, do you want to slide over here and do the welding, or you want to go over there?
No, we can, I can slide on that.
Okay.
end.
Ma'am, you got, there's some glue on.
My super glue is doing something.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. If you have any questions, just let me know.
We got a couple things that we're gonna give away as part of, for the soldering. So can you write your name down on here for us? If you want to get some of the supplies, we got a couple things we're gonna raffle off here.
Woo! Paul, do you want this light right here?
Yeah, that will.
All right, pardon me.
Over there.
Oh, sorry, sir.
Want to participate? Again, participate in a couple of raffle things we're going to give away. Sign up.
Oh, hello. How are you? Did you guys get any time to see this? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Just write your name down.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much. Oh, no, that's okay. This is my first project. So we did this. Did you guys get one of these?
Let it heat up because I don't use it. Oh yeah, no problem, no problem. Okay, so what we got, we're gonna solder Photoetch instead of glue. And
For soldering.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
And it's cheap. And it's a two-box. I think they're $6-7. Yeah.
So for supper?
okay, so the
Yes.
fundamentals that we're gonna be
Want one
looking
of
at
these?
is
Yes, please.
we're gonna
You want it
need
to be
a
part of the,
soldering
little
heat
raffle?
source.
Well, I'm on staff, so I don't know if it's fair.
You can use the soldering iron, but I'm going to show you how pistol torch works better. And why you want to go that route. You'll need solder, which is a key. You want silver bearing solder. Solder that is has silver in it. No acid core, no rosin core. You want straight solder. Radio Shack, I think you can get it. I've got a list of stuff over there and on the chart where you can buy it. There's also solder that you can get at Hobby Lobby for about, the silver solder is a little expensive, it's $10, but you get 40% off, and that's Hobby Lobby. So silver solder. Yeah, and then the list, yeah, and I think it's listed on that slide. But anyway, then you'll need sandpaper to prep the joints, because you want a really tight joint for soldering. The solder doesn't fill a lot of gaps. Tight joints for soldering. You'll want some alligator clips. You'll want a little bit of cloth for a heat sink. And I'll explain what the heat sink does. And then you'll want third-hand tools, because what we want to do is we want to solder away from where the solder and flux is. And you'll also need liquid flux. That's the other thing. or paste flux. The liquid flux flows real easy. The paste flux will kind of help hold the solder in place if that's a necessity. So we've got the other thing I like is a metal pan, you know, cheapo thrift store pan, metal. I use a lot of magnets to hold stuff in place because you can just solder all the crap out of them. Yeah. You can also solder with tape and glue tack to hold things in position. And again, it will burn up. So if regularly you could solder in your room. If you're going to burn up a couple of things, then you might want to go out in the garage. I actually have out in my garage, I have at my tool bench, my vise, I have a metal plate with a little L thing bolted on, and I put it in the vise, tighten it up, and now I have an extended metal plate that I can solder and blast hot air all around. So that's another option. Okay, so what you're going to want to do, prep and positioning is everything. The soldering is going to be, when we do a couple of these test things, it's going to take about 10 seconds to do the soldering. Prep work. Sand wherever the solder is going to be. You want to remove any old oxidation. So a little bit of sanding, just make everything rough. And then I usually do a little bit of alcohol. This is isopropyl alcohol. Clean the part a little bit, rub it off, and then you're gonna get ready to solder. So what we got here, if you as we look, we pass this around. I'm going to solder these two things, and then time-wise some other stuff. Here is the same thing soldered. And a test soldering thing so you can see some of what it looks like after it's done. Those are not cleaned up. So we've sanded, we've used a little alcohol. We are now going to add a little bit of down there in that box, Bob, there's probably any kind of a paintbrush will work.
Hand this up quick.
Yeah, that's it.
See, I didn't bring any.
No, I didn't have it. That's it. Okay. So what we got right here, we've got a front fender where you bend it, and then you've got to glue or solder the two sides to make the thing a full piece. So I have bent it. I have sanded it, I have cleaned it, and I have checked to be sure there is no gaps. That fender there had a gap of about 20 thousandths, and this solder doesn't like to fill that. You can fix that, but you got to be careful because then you start adding extra solder that you have to remove later on. So this one is bent, that one is bent. I'm adjusted my jig a little bit so that it's flat. Putting in soldering paste, and then I'm cutting off a little bit of solder. And in this case, this particular solder, I have found, this diameter, is exactly, if you put it the exact length of what you need to solder, it will fill that entire. Oh, this is 15 thousandths. But the stuff I've got, you just cut it a little shorter. It takes a little bit of an idea. It takes a second or two to understand how much solder is too much. Because then you'll just get solder beaded up around that you have to remove. If you looked at those fenders and stuff there, there's hardly any cleanup except for, sanding, cleaning off any residues with alcohol again.
Anybody?
Okay.
Oh, hey, Ron.
Pencil torches. I got a Micromart over there that shows some of this stuff that you can get from Micromart. These are probably hardware store. This is a benzomatic pencil torch. You light with a lighter. This one is a Harbor Freight one. I don't know how much these are. Same thing. And they load with lighter fluid. And a butane. I got a little can over there. You just spritz it into that. And then this one's about $50, but it's self-lighting. So we've got our piece here. We've got flux, and you don't really want to have a lot of flux because not yet, just a little flux.
Two my band-aid?
Look what I'm holding and see what happens. Okay, so on this particular thing, the joint is these edge joints, and this one there, it's a little curved. So I'm just going to curve the solder a little bit, although it's not really not that big. And the other key element is solder will go to the heat. So if you've got a joint, you can apply heat on the end, and that solder will run down to it. So you can kind of direct the solder if you want, but no still stuff. So the key is, again, I double checked. I've got a relatively tight joint over there. This other joint is opened up, so I'll have to fix it. Stick my solder in there. Now initially, a heat sink keeps solder from unsoldering what you've already soldered or going somewhere you don't want it to go. Heat sinks would be a little wet rag or clipping on more of these flat hairnet and alligator clips. You can also clip an alligator clip on, and it will soak up heat so that you can protect the joint. And these little things are handy. These are hair clips that you can bend and use them flat, bend them for length, and those are for Walmart tailoring. Okay, so we got solder in there. We've got that going. Again, hot, dangerous. I should have my thing even over here. Okay, so this is a self-starter one. I can just light it with a lighter, but there's our torch. I flipped it over, and there's what you want. You can make some adjustments here, but that's about right. And then what you're going to do, you're going to solder, you're going to chase solder. What happens is the liquid solder, if it boils off too fast, it'll kick your solder out, and then you'd have to just comb and kind of poke it back in, which you can do.
You have to poke it with a stick.
Gotta poke it with a stick. Okay, so you're set up. You've checked your joints. Your solder's in there, and now I'm going to creep a little heat up in there, and we'll start. Can you see the joint? It's this one right here.
Never actually touch it.
No, that's because now my adjustment, whatever adjustment I have here for position, is locked in. I never touch it like you would with the soldering iron. You're holding the soldering on there and you're constantly moving that joint. This is what. See that it's starting to flash off a little?
Yep.
And this is imperative to heat. Again, you just want to be careful. Like this, you want to have it where it doesn't touch anything to burn. And because of the time we used and all, it smoked a little bit, but that's my fault. So now, there, and again, that's that same joint we had in here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come by and we're going to solder the other side. So what I'm going to first do is let this cool down a little bit, like that. Move this over so it acts as a heat sink. And then you can add another one, like so. Or I could come in here and arbitrarily drape a little bit of wet. Stick this in there. You can actually stick this in here and clamp it in, and that will keep heat from going over and unsoldering that other joint. Usually half an inch, you need a heat sink. Any more than half an inch, and you can control it, you're fine. It won't let it go. So because of you'll see when we look at this one, I left a little bit of a gap out here and it didn't quite get up there. It didn't quite close that gap. But again, Now I could just go back there and put putty down a little bit, because you can manhandle these. You know, you can manhandle them. You can bend them up and twist them all you want. So if there's a little, you know, that's what's cool about soldering is you can manhandle it. Okay, so now we're going to tighten this joint up a little bit. And do exactly the same thing. That was smart.
I was kind of wondering, but you know.
Too much flux. What'll happen is that much flux in there. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's some time. So you can all see. But that's if it's cooling in there, that's a little too much flux. You don't really need much. What the flux is doing is the flux is taking out impurities in the metal. You've sanded a little bit of it off, roughed it up, and then you've taken and the flux just takes off that last molecular chemical stuff that the solder doesn't like. If the solder joint isn't heated well enough and the solder is kind of lumpy, that's because you didn't use enough heat or it wasn't clean enough. There's no fix for that except going back and cleaning the joint brand new. If the flux gets, particularly the paste flux, can kind of tend to turn brown because you burned it up, then it's no good. Not that the flux isn't no good. You have to go back and clean that joint because the burnt up flux will inhibit the solder. So if you burned up the flux, then you're okay. Lay that in there. Again, fire up the torch.
Why is he melting? He put the solder.
Yeah, okay, so we'll see what mistakes they make and I can explain what happened. I'll pass this around and that you can pretty much see. What happened is I heated this end up too much, too quick, and all the solder went down to the end and I was, I could have taken a minute to do it. But if you just take your time and practice a little bit, it'll take a while, but grab yourself a bunch of scrap Photoetch cutoff stuff and just start soldering it too.
It demonstrates what you were saying about how solder will run towards the heat.
The solder will run right to the heat. Okay, so now here's another little box. Same thing. We got the same joint, but this time we're going to take, again, it's the same one. You know what? I'm not going to do that. It's the same joint, just all that. But here, what we're going to do is we're going to flip this around and we're going to solder it. We're going to solder the tube. Here you got a little tube that goes in here.
You see the gap in the solder.
And that's fixable. We could go back and do that, but just for this demo purposes, you guys can.
Sometimes you learn more from your mistake.
Oh yeah, because by correcting it.
Well, that or seeing what's wrong and then knowing, oh, that's wrong, and how do I fix it?
Yeah, I get it for it. It's gonna happen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's when you try to cram that building.
Okay, so there's my little tube that I've again prepped to fit properly. Okay, there it is. And now this time I'm going to take.
Calm down.
And I didn't have any coffee.
Among modelers.
So here, now this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little piece of solder, a short one, and I'm going to bend it a little. Again, this is a little piece of solder about 1/8 of an inch long, and I'm going to lay it in here.
Somewhere here.
Yes, that's right.
It's not worth it, right? Everybody goes and tries to look for
Exactly
it.
what I was trying to avoid doing yesterday. I didn't have 15 faces.
I know, right? It's different to talk about it. Just sit there with the music going.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, you understand the technique. So this is kind of tedious, and so this might not have been a good idea.
No, it's good to see the struggle to put it in there because when we're doing it at home, we're missing it. What's wrong with me?
Okay, there it's
Paul dropped
in.
it too. So
Yeah,
it's
there it's
okay.
in. So we'll put a little bit of flux on
Oh, I
it.
know.
This is my big flux brush, and I really wanted my small flux.
Hey, you told him any brush he could put.
At least you didn't bring out the two-way paintbrush, huh?
There you go.
Point tape. Just some flux in there. Okay, and again, let's see. Bob, is there a lighter in there? I could show him what these other colors look like.
He's got a lighter.
I got one.
Got one.
Okay. Same thing. The better quality ones have a better shape because of the machining and stuff. But here again, you can adjust the flame, and that's about right, about half an inch or so of that little. And again, now we're just going to come in here. And again, all metal stuff and keep the heat away so you don't burn stuff. That's why everything's elevated or on metal. And again, if that joint right there or that joint right there was soldered, I put some water, some cloth in there, and maybe clamp the cloth on there. This guy's not this guy. Like it's getting low on fuel.
Just use your quick word. That's okay.
Yeah.
We've seen the difference now. You obviously don't have to, you're trying to do this right around all your flammable.
No, that's why you want to. This process, you want to be in a place where you know you can't be out here sticking around with this. Light up the, light up the papers over
You
here.
don't have the big jar of lacquer thing sitting right there.
There you go.
Yeah, and I mean, I flashed out. You can see how quick it is. And your prep work, the amount of time you spend getting it all ready to go, then will help you with the actual soldering itself. Now, for you other guys, here's this setup. We'll get to this one and then. I've got this set up here to see. I can show you. I can run this whole scene down there, and this is just a butt joint. And like this thing right here, that's a fender bracket for a. You know how you'll have a fender and then you'll have a flat thing bend you want to glue on there? No, you don't glue it on. You solder it on. And now you can go in there and bend on that thing all day long. And then yeah. The other technique while I'm prepping this one's prepped. I already stuck the little tiny things on it. This is a T bracket for a ship if you decided you wanted to string. If you wanted to string actual wire between the posts and you didn't want to use a plastic one, you can just make yourself a rod one, antennas or something like that. So that one, yeah, this is a tile. That's a piece of tile. This is blue tack and tape, which you can see I burned up on the first one. I soldered that one. I'm going to stick some wet towel on there. That'll keep that one from coming undone. Again, my alignment is not precise because this is just a quick thing. But if I had this precisely aligned, when I'm done, it's there. Nothing moves. So I got that in there. Let's get a little flux on here. Now this one, because it's flat, you've got to be kind of careful because we're going to burn up a couple of these. I got my tool.
Solder on either side.
Yeah, I just wrapped solder around the thing.
Oh, okay.
I just bent a couple of things of solder over the top. Again, this probably didn't work as well as it could have. Because what ended up happening is I burned a little bit of the flux, got burned, and so it kind of beat it up. So now what I would do is I'd undo that and
By putting that back on, the fire back
yeah, fire back on and knocking it off, sanding it off. But that was the idea, that you could do some other kinds of things. The other thing I wanted to mention is the other technique. I was going to solder this and all, but it's just a matter of, again, I had this set up. I have a piece of that, and I was going to make that same solder of that tube on there, and here, hang it out the end, put my magnet on there to hold it down, and this was in there only so that the magnet wouldn't wedge that tube off the cockeye, and then I would just come up under here,
Okay.
and wrap my solder around the joint, come up under here, just heat that thing up. And then if I needed to solder something down on the other end, just come back here, wrap that with plastic, this, or stick a couple of these in there, because these will take the heat and suck it right out. So the other thing I was going to mention is another way for delicate parts. And I had it. Okay, the other thing you can do is you can determine where the part's going to go, especially with some really delicate parts that are very difficult to hold in place. You can take and put a little solder, like here, put a little flux down, put a little solder, mark an area, etch it, so you know that's where your part goes. Put a little solder on there, take your part, put a little solder on it, same thing, hold it here in your deal. Put a little solder on there, use your heater. That's just tin it. Yeah, you're basically tinning it. And then you can take this part and you don't just add a little flux, and you can then heat the part, and it should melt.
Oh, it already has the stuff on it.
It's got the stuff on it, so all you need is a little flux.
It's lunch, so
Perfect. And I will relax.
relax.
Nobody's due here till 1
Okay, so again, the same thing. Again, this you can sand file on this all you want. This is a tile, and that's one of the giveaways. This one has a locking thing. That way you can lose it and use it like a pencil. So now what you can do, if you can hold this in place steady enough, and then I have that. Some of the issue with this soldering is because we want all our parts to be aligned correctly. The hardest part is just working out is all the setup and getting a third hand tool or this.
That takes 10 seconds, it looks like.
Yeah, this is not going to take.
Like I said, the soldering is easy work.
It's just like painting, you do the mask.
Yeah. It takes you 4 hours to mask in 5 minutes.
See, I'm bubbling that off a
And you
little
think
bit.
I might be doing something wrong. You can't think.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see it.
And what happened is, it's shiny, and it looks good, but just as it was setting up, I took
Can't you just use a tape to?
You can hold it with tape, the tape's going to burn up.
No, I mean the part, the plate that you're.
Oh, no, the plate didn't
But you
move, I
did it,
moved
yeah,
my
you
thing.
just did it, yeah.
So there again, that's another technique you can use. And granted, depending on how shaky I was, the other thing, another little trick you might not know about, you can take these and a pointer or something like a drill bit, and you can hold that part down.
Yeah.
You can hold it in place, and then what you do is, then what I would do here is I would put the flux and the solder on this side, and I'd put the heat over here.
Yeah.
So you always want
So the heat will
to,
go away from your
yeah,
sword.
so on everything you're doing, you want the solder and the flux away from the heat, between the heat and the part you're trying
then
to
it
solder.
pushes,
And it'll
pulls it
pull
up. Yeah.
or strip it down. So that's another little technique. The magnet things, again, just strap. These are little holders for cabinet doors. If you can go to the thrift store and buy boxes of these for like $1,
Yeah.
and again, you could take them apart, this will hold stuff square. You can move stuff around. The other thing I did with this one is I took the magnets and I separated a little bit so there's a gap down there. Now I don't solder the magnet to the joint, and that's an old woodworking thing. You put your clamps on, and that way there's a line where the glue is. So basically, this setup right here, we could, and this is just the whole. But this stuff isn't magnetic, so this is just here to hold that flat square. This has been prepped. This is just a butt joint. So we're just going to see. I don't know. We're going to see how this works.
And as you prep there, one thing I forgot to mention, I saw his torches, is that if you need to do some sophisticated bands on the metal, you can anneal it by torching the fret.
Yeah.
But you got to be very careful with the small parts because you can just basically destroy them.
Now, the electric soldering iron will do a lot of the same stuff, but what happens is it'll only solder like on this box. It won't solder more than about 1/4 of an inch because the length of time you got to hold that thing. So you're holding that soldering. I could hold that soldering iron on that last one I just did, this one. I could hold the soldering on there and then hold this part and then pull it away once it fluxed and zap. But you're gonna, for this piece right here, I'd probably have to hold a 45-watt soldering iron on there probably for 2 or 3 minutes.
And you have to be in contact with
Yeah.
Now, if you're using
on,
this,
by the
if
way.
this thing is hot, you do want to take, and this is a wet thing, because you don't want any solder out here until you're going to do the solder. I've seen guys use this and put solder on. I mean, it can work, but this is the way to go if you can. This is definitely the way to go. And if you solder something or bend it so many times it comes undone, you just solder.
Yeah, we were almost
You just rack it up, and it's a butt joint. So we're going to see if we can pull, how much we can pull on this. And I've never pulled this long before.
Yeah, that's a skill that's good to have, even if you're not going to use it all the time.
So here's what we're doing. Well, we're putting flux on here, and I'm going to put the solder and the flux back here, and I'm going to spray my heat down here. And on this long it'll run, I might want to add more solder, like a couple of things, or just not run as long a line.
Oh, so you don't have to make it be the length.
No, and you can just keep adding to it. You can, you solder an inch, and then you move your setups to hold that. Put your heat sink in there. Come and solder an inch. And there's usually about 1/4 of an inch or so of the old solder that will melt enough to bring the new one, but it won't melt all the way back. And you've got a place back here where you're holding it in solid. And then you gradually move your stuff out of the way when you get down to the end. And like on this, if both ends were soldered and all you did was putty the seam down here, that thing, you could knock that thing around. You could blast it around.
Makes you appreciate that sled armor on that striker model. Remember Matt Curwise?
Yeah.
He welded every one of those, and he was cursing.
Okay, so we popped our solder here on the backside and it's been fluxed. So we're going to stack it in here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to look to see. Basically, I don't have hardly any gap there at all because I did my prep work. And like on those other ones, 20,000s, they don't like to close the gliders. But again, we could go back and fix all those, just add more solder. So there's that bad boy right there. I've never heated one this big. But I thought, this is shit this is stuff you can really be doing. So again, we're just going to sneak in, and here I'm going to start in the middle because we're just see it?
Yeah.
Okay, what happened? It creeped down, but it only creeped down 1/4 of an inch because my solder got moved back.
So cool.
It's boiling off.
No, you know what happened? It came off. It came undone. So what ended up happening, did you see how that solder prepped? Okay, and then it stopped because now my joint is separated. Instead of being like this thing went over to here, and now there's a gap in it, and it quit soldering. So prep work was lousy, and now I can't grab it because it's hot as shit, and I can't grab it to fix it. But you see what happened is this thing
The solder
it
wouldn't
moved
fill the
over.
gap.
And actually, because I was using too much of it, it worked it.
But this is just like building models. You gotta put the
Yeah,
prep
this
time
is
up
it.
front.
So you understand
Yeah.
that even with my expertise,
But that demonstrates
stuff
what you said
screws
before,
up.
the butt joint's gotta be, solder
yeah.
won't fill a
And
gap.
here, see, like I said, I've never done this. So what I should have done is come in here and taken and clamped on a bunch of this heat stuff so that I don't distort. And I would have clamped them on down here so I don't eliminate that distortion. And then, heated that one.
Yeah.
That's
But you don't
just-
have to solder the entire length of it. You can just put little beads in it.
Yeah,
So you're
and
not
the other thing
shooting
here on
yourself.
this, depending on what you're going to use it for, maybe you just spot weld it like the welders
Yeah.
do. You put a bot here, 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 here,
You're
and then if you need a nice clean seam there, you putty it or you put in some of that, the clear cement
Yeah.
that you can just leave it in.
Yeah.
Now you come back, you sand it, you paint it,
do a
you clean it with alcohol or lacquer thinner to get all of this junk off of it, and then you can prime it and paint it. How many numbers do we have?
We have 7.
Okay,
Seven
so
participating in this. So
okay, so I'm gonna pick a number arbitrarily in my head, and whoever's his name is by that number. 1 through 7, I'm gonna pick number 4.
Bob Ryan, you're the
Bob
winner.
Ryan. Okay, so what he gets is hypo cement, which is the cement I like to use to glue photo etch to
Hypo-cement?
plastic or to itself, and then that and the soldering plate. That is the silver solder.
Which one else? This one?
Pink one.
Yeah, pile.
The other thing is, there's another thing you can get from Micromart. It's a little expensive.
solder?
It's called low temperature
And
solder.
flux.
And it's a little lower temperature. And then you could solder here, come here, and not use the heat sink method and just use a lower soldering heat solder. But with the torch, the control of the heat is like instantaneous, so it's a little harder to control that way. And then there's some stuff called anti-flux. And it looks like this flux here. What it is, I don't know what it is. But what it'll do is if you put it right here, a drop of it, that solder will run, that's as far as it'll go. It'll stop right there. It'll run right there into the shop. That can be useful, but it's a little expensive. Micromart, I've got a catalog over there with everything shown so you can look at what you can buy and how much it basically runs at Micromart. Hobby Lobby's got a bunch of stuff. The soldering flux, this liquid stuff, the small size, Big R, if you guys have a Big R up here in Denver. If not, Ace Hardware maybe Tractor Supply. You can get this. Anybody that does plumbing stuff will have this. Sometimes it comes bigger, but you can look around. The welding department at an Ace Hardware may have this liquid stuff. This is handy. This, you can see it's about halfway down. I probably had that full.
Where'd you find the skinny diameter?
This is Radio Shack stuff that I bought. I've had this roll probably for 15 years. I don't know if the new Hobby Lobby, the Hobby Town, are carrying some of the Radio Shack. They have some solder, but I don't know. I don't think they have this skinny stuff anymore, but they might be able to get it. But this is skinny silver bearing solder. The thicker stuff like there you can get at Hobby Lobby, that is fine. You just cut it in little smaller pieces. And then you get used to how much.
And it'll bleed.
It'll do this exact same thing, except this skinny stuff is you just cut the length that you need.
Ideal. Yeah.
It's ideal. But that stuff is you just cut that in half and use half of it for a joint this long. You put it in the middle or at the end and just pull it down.
This is 0.31, the other stuff is 0.25.
Steel plate, does it act as too much of a heat sink?
It can. That's probably what I ran into here. Normally what I would do is I would move this rig out to the edge to where that joint would be completely out here.
Gotcha.
And then it not. It does work as a heat sink, but not all that often.
Okay.
I just haven't run into real issues with it because it's just such a fascinating. And the only reason it's metal, I'm using metal, is because you can stick these magnets on it and just do all kinds of stuff with the magnets.
That's just a wall tile?
That's just a wall tile, any size, nice flat.
Yeah.
Because if you get the jerky ones, it's hard to keep things flat. I'm just laying this down on there. And then, you can use tape. Yeah. And again, you just start compiling a few things. The other trick I like, these alligator clips with the teeth. They don't work too good because they really poke the metal and they can divot it and stuff. So what I always do, these again, Radio Shack, the Hobby Lobby, Radio Shack, they've been stocking these, but I think everybody's out. These are flat alligator clips. Or the hair clips. The hair clips. Hair clips do the same thing, and they're flat. And what's cool about these is you can bend them to do some other shit for other modeling, clamping reasons. But there again, these things are Walmart all day long. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, the alligator clips. What I like to do is transfer the alligator clip, use the alligator clip, but use it with one of these.
Oh, okay.
You know, that way I have that. You know, yeah, and I'm just using this to hold it because now I need to hold this down there.
So I'm saying, because these have teeth.
Yeah, and you don't really like the teeth for holding this stuff because it can tend to pop a little bit, deform it. So that's all. If you've got the alligator teeth, just fine. Just use them to hold this clip. Because again, you're just using your arms and your legs to move it in positions where you can access it. And that's copper wire with these soldered on, and there's a perfect way to practice your soldering. You solder those right on.
Thanks, man.
Well, I was thinking
Thanks,
just-
Matt.
I was thinking the leftover French you can practice.